This is probably the number one question, maybe you could agree, but at least that I get asked now is, how do I get started? I don't have anything.
Isaac French, welcome to the Raw Built channel. You are 27 years old. You built one of the most amazing short-term rental portfolios that I've seen, and you sold it for how much?
$7 million.
$7 million. So when did you sell that? Were you 27? Were you 26?
I was 26. It's one property with 7 units, so that's flat out $1 million a key.
Nice. Okay. And so you became a millionaire by 26?
Yeah, I guess that's when the wire hit my account. I don't know when the value was actually created, but
that's not bad, man. Most people are just trying to not be in student loan debt by 26, but somehow you've managed to outpace all of us as a youngin, as a youngster. Your story's always been super cool, man. Been following that along, obviously, since you've made the sale. I want to jump into that story a little bit, understand the numbers, break it down. Obviously, $7 million is a big number. So why don't we start with what's the actual profit on a $7 million sale? And then let's talk about the property a little bit.
Yeah, so we sold the real estate and the audience all in turnkey $7 million. We owed $2.4 million on the loan. We had $550,000 of broker commissions and another $100,000, let's just call it, of extra closing costs, attorney's fees, etc. And then I owned 55%, and I had friends and family partners in at 45%. So yeah, that's how it shook out.
Dang. Okay. So if I'm quick math here, you sold it for 7, sounded like about 3 million of that, maybe 3.2 million was like debt and fees. So you took home 3.5 roughly in profit. You own 50% of that. So you're walking away with like 1.5 to $1.75 million in your pocket.
It was right around 2 million pre-tax.
Oh yeah, just $2 million. Okay, cool guy, dude. Awesome, proud of you. So let's jump into it. Tell me about this property. Tell me about the kind of the inception of the property or the inception of the idea. What was kind of like? Did you plan on building an amazing 7-unit development when you started this whole venture?
Should I give you like the whole story in a nutshell?
Please.
So I was 24 years old. I just gotten married and had worked in construction for 6 years. So I had that experience, which was like invaluable, and also had studied accounting and tax prep, and also am very artistic and creative. So had always wanted to be an architect actually, but didn't really want to put in the time to study for it. And after all of these different kind of bits and pieces of work experience, wanted to bring it together into a project that I could just bring all of that together, pour all of my heart and soul and passion into it, and wear all these different hats at once instead of just being a general contractor or being an accountant or doing my little art projects on the side. And at heart, I love people, so naturally hospitality seemed like a great fit. So I had this idea to create this village of short-term rental cabins, like for lack of a better terminology to put it. And this was in early 2021. And so I actually went on YouTube and started searching like short-term rental village and just like, minimalist cabin and all of these different keywords. And lo and behold, I stumbled on this channel called Raw Built. And I just binged the content because like you had some pretty great inspirational videos, and I literally just watched hours of it. Simultaneous to all that, I was actually looking for land, and one morning scrolling Zillow came across this 5-acre parcel that was for sale for $138,000 and had like these huge, beautiful trees, but was also all overgrown and had this little cow pond in the middle. I'd driven by this place like probably 100 times in my life. It's 5 minutes down the road from my home, but I never thought anything of it because it just looked like it was a jungle. Well, I saw a drone photo. I saw that pond and I was like, I've got to go see this. So that day, like an hour later, I was on site with the listing agent, and literally when I walked on the property, I got chills. I was like, this is incredible. I could just sense, though it was like, it needed a lot of work just naturally to even bring out the beauty that was there. I could sense this is special. There's something like really beautiful about this place. It was the combination of these trees, these gentle rolling hills, the water. And so literally we locked it up, got under contract that day. I had like $20,000 of savings. So I'm 24 years old, have about $20,000 of savings. And I immediately started making phone calls. So I started calling local banks. I called friends and family. And long story short, we had a 30-day option period to get it figured out. And I was able, after getting told no a lot of times, I found a bank that said, yeah, we'll give you a construction loan, 80% of the appraised value, but you're going to have to come up with the difference. And the appraised value actually was hundreds of thousands of dollars short of what it even cost us. So thankfully, I was able to recruit some family members that had access to a line of credit through their construction business. And we all poured our personal savings into it as well. And yeah, we 30 days later closed on the property and were ready to, like the next day I was on site with a chainsaw, cutting down trees and just bootstrapping the whole thing. So
Wow.
was drawing up designs, and like I spent like 3 days just figuring out like framing the perfect views for each cabin and just trying to literally like feel my way through it to create, like my approach for the whole project was creating this overall vibe and sense of place and just feeling, I guess, for lack of a better term, that it's hard to articulate, but it's just like the culmination of all these little details, like everything from the front gate to the views that are framed by each cabin to the little tiny like attention to detail at the entryways of each cabin. And so it was just a ton of fun to spend that kind of time and effort and energy. And like I said, put my passion into the project. And I think it came through with the final product.
I mean, that clearly it did. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. I guess it all started because you watched the Raw Built channel. So I think this is a great opportunity to tell people to like and subscribe. But secondly, the reason that, we're chatting today is you and I have chatted about this property a couple of times. It's been really cool. It's an inspirational story. And so for that reason, I actually asked you to come and speak to HostCon that's happening in August 29th through the 31st. So that's my little plug here before we get to the rest of the juice. If everybody wants to come and see Isaac bring down the house, he's going to be talking all about this and a lot more, I think, in the direct booking space, some secrets that we won't really reveal. But if you guys want to grab your tickets, head on over to hostcon.com. I think right now, by the time you're watching this, we still have some form of early bird pricing. So go click that link in the description down below. But okay, so let's get back to the story here. So if I hear you correctly, you kind of started looking at this idea of a village. You find this piece of land, you go and you walk it, you're smitten by it, which, we all are, I think. We've all been there where we walk property and we're just like, this is it, because land is just such a beautiful thing. It had rolling hills, it had a pond or a lake, and you're like, I'm gonna go for this, and you didn't have the money yourself, so you decided to go into your network. And I think this is something that a lot of people like neglect pretty big. Like a lot of people are like, I don't have money, so I can't get into real estate. And I guess, let me ask you this. When you approach your network, family, friends, coworkers, acquaintances, all that stuff, did you have any experience in real estate?
No, I had experience in construction, but this is probably the number one question, maybe you could agree, but at least that I get asked now is, how do I get started? I don't have anything. And yes, I'm not going to discount that I had like incredible family and upbringing. I mean, so many intangible things. And so it's not wise to compare yourselves with other people. But at the end of the day, I had like $20,000 to my name, and I had this work experience. But what I really had that was valuable is I was 110% consumed with this idea that we could create this one-of-a-kind destination. And that kind of passion is electric. People can't help but be magnetized towards that kind of passion and energy. So that's like my biggest piece of advice, though it's like easier said than done. You need to actually believe in yourself and have a dream and a vision worth believing in. And then like where there's a will, there's a way. The universe is going to readjust to enable you to make that vision come to pass. But when I was fully convicted and convinced that this was what we were going to create, regardless of even what like a ton of friends that own short-term rentals in the same market told me, which was, hey, there's way too many, there's a glut of short-term rentals in this market. Don't try building more, all of this. I was like, no, look, you don't get it. I'm going to create something that does not exist and that people may not even realize they need. But when they see it and they see it on social media and they see their friends staying there, they're going to know that they have to have it. And sure enough, we had people coming back 3 and 4 times in 1 year just to stay there because it was such a unique experience.
Well, let's not discount. I mean, look, I think it's fair to say, hey, not everyone has your situation, because there will be people, by the way, that watch this and they're like, cool. So step 1, have a rich family. I hear this all the time on TikTok. Yeah, trust me. Oh yeah, you're on Twitter, so I hear Twitter's ruthless. But for me, on TikTok, I used to talk about my how I bought a house in LA for $624,000, and now it's worth like 1.2, 1.3. And so I always kind of break down those numbers, and people are always like, "Great, cool. Step 1, have $1 million to buy a house in LA." And I'm like, dude, I was broke What part of that didn't you get? But there's still a skill, or there's still something to be said about the fact that you got people on board, regardless of how much money they have. They're probably really smart if they have it. They're not just going to give it to anybody. So you still put together a pretty good pitch presentation, deck, vision to get them on board, because yeah, anyone who's smart, who has money, isn't just going to be like, hey, you have a fiery spirit, I'm just going to give you money. I'm sure you still probably had some level of data or presentation that you gave to them, right?
I did, but it was rustic. I mean, I'd never done a real estate deal. I didn't even know what a pro forma was. I literally got on Apple Numbers.
Work with me here, man. Work with me here. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I did. I was like, okay, let's see. Yeah, I mean, maybe we could get 70% occupancy. Let's see, what kind of rates could I... And just like made out 3 sensitivity models of different occupancy rates and different rates for nightly stays. And then came up with a budget based on my experience and intuition. But that was honestly pretty optimistic. And we ended up spending way more than I anticipated.
Okay,
so
that's what I was going to ask.
Thing.
Okay.
Now, here's the crazy thing. So the bank initially appraised the project at 1.8 million-ish, and then they loaned 80%, which is what, like 1.45, 1.5, something like that. We ended up spending 2.3 million all in. And so thank God that we actually...
Half a $1 million spread?
Yeah. It was actually more like 600,000, but because of the line of credit that my partners had access to, which wasn't coming out of their pocket, it was coming through a line of credit that they were able to channel. But it was, we had to be creative. Like, there was a lot of stress to know we were spending an operating line of credit to get this project done, and then knowing that, okay, we got to refinance this thing as soon as we possibly can. So here's one of the juiciest parts of the whole story. 4 months after we opened, which we just had this unbelievable launch, which I want to tell you about because it was so crazy, like with what actually happened getting kicked off Airbnb. But 4 months after we opened, we got reappraised by the same real estate appraiser. And this time it came in, the first time was 1.8, second time it was 3.1 million. So almost double. Now that means we were able to get a bank to come in, another local bank, and with the best terms, they loaned us another 80%. So roughly 2.5 million. So we were able to pay off all of the construction debt, all of the line of credit, the personal savings, and have like 200,000 plus of equity that we could reinvest. So that just shows the power of having like a physical property they can come look at, but the power of like amazing cash flow and future bookings, which was possible because of the audience we were building and the direct bookings that were starting to come in.
Wow, so you basically did like the ultimate Burr stir. That's what I call it. So a Burr, for anyone that's not familiar with this, it's a buy, rehab, rent, refinance. When it's a Burr stir, it's that same process, but you're renting it out as a short-term rental. So that's kind of what you did. You built it. You kind of financed it that initial way, came out of pocket with some cash. You built it, and because it's now, I guess, a commercial property, they probably valued it based off of the NOI?
Yeah, they had like
nice.
They have 3 versions. They have the real estate comps, they have the replacement value, and then they have the income approach, which was way higher. So then they took like an aggregate and kind of found the middle ground between the 3.
Nice. Okay, so you build it, you're operating it, you're making a ton of money. You go to the bank and you say, hey, bank, check it out. You remember when y'all said 1.8? You're ridiculous. It's actually 3.2, and they're like, great, we'll give you 80% of that, whatever that number is. And they're like, great. So they basically cut you a check to pay back everybody, and you got what I refer to as a free house. I always say this on YouTube. I actually did a video on this a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people are like, well, it's not free. You still have a mortgage. I consider it free in that you paid a lot of cash to make this deal happen. You got all that cash back, and now you just have a crazy cash flowing asset.
So here's a pro tip on what I'm going to do on my next deal. So though they may tell you otherwise, I'm pretty much convinced like the whole system is somewhat rigged. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but basically banks control the appraisal industry, right? Because the appraisers were working for the bank, and wherever the bank needs that number to come in, the appraisal is just magically going to come in at that.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
So here's what I would do next time. So I have a friend who was a multifamily developer, and what he did is go ahead and find who the MAI designated, so they're all certified, they're all good to go, appraiser is that the bank typically uses, or maybe they have like 3 or 4 that they work with, and then hire them proactively before you even talk to the bank to do an appraisal of the project, but they're working for him, they're not working for the bank. And then they're going to be a lot more objective. That's my opinion. And sure enough, in his case, I mean, it was a massive difference. It was like over $1 million of value difference on that deal. But then you take that appraisal and you give that to the bank. Look, they can't really argue. Yeah, they may push back and you may end up having to compromise somewhere in the middle. But if nothing else, it's going to most likely buy you a bunch more value. That just means you can leverage more, and you have to think about raising less equity. So that's what I'm doing on my next deal.
Okay, fantastic. So you get all your money back in this ultimate Burr stir, and then what happens? Now, I imagine your debt service is actually much higher. Your debt service initially was 1.4. You've increased it by $1 million at this point, so I'd imagine that's probably increasing your debt service like $5,000 to $7,000 a month.
Yeah, it was something like that, and it went from interest only to interest in principal because it was a 5.6% on a 20-year. This was in July of 2022, so it was a great time to lock in some long-term debt because rates were about to skyrocket.
Yeah. Okay. So not bad, but you do increase. Now you have that principal payment, which is juicy, I imagine. How did that change profitability? Were you still, making money?
Oh yeah, I mean our revenues were so out of control, and it really just happened proportionately to our audience growth, and the occupancy. So our first 12-month period, we were 95%, 94 point some percent occupied overall across all units, all days of the year. And our RevPAR was like north of $500. 80% of all those bookings were coming direct. So should we talk about direct bookings and building an audience around a property?
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So you're not necessarily just booking on Airbnb at this point.
Yeah. So here's how it all started. 2 weeks after we opened, this is end of January in 2022. I wake up one day and open up the Airbnb app, and everything's like grayed out, and all of our listings say suspended. And I didn't even really think that was even a possibility. I mean, much less that I would never even be contacted before that happened. So I was pretty anxious and pretty scared about it. I was pretty freaked out. I was 25 years old at that point, had just spent millions of dollars of other people's money, and our business ground to a screeching halt. So I started calling friends and just kind of workshopping what to do about it. And I knew direct bookings would be a key part of the strategy in the long term, but that first month that you're on Airbnb, you get a boost. And so my strategy was just go exclusive on Airbnb initially. So somebody told me you need to do an influencer giveaway. So I called up this group in Dallas that had a travel account, and they said, yeah, pay us at $950 and we'll post a 2-night stay giveaway to our followers. And so we'll leverage our following. They'll follow you. You'll give away a 2-night stay and you'll get a bunch of followers.
Wait, how many followers did they have?
They had about 200,000 at the time.
Okay, 200,000. Got it.
And I was basically starting from scratch. And so I threw up a direct bookings website overnight and put that in the bio for our Instagram account, posted some photos of the property. We did the giveaway, paid them $950. And in 7 days, we got roughly 5,000, just over 5,000 followers from scratch. We gave away a 2-night stay, and we had like $40,000 of direct bookings come in a week. It was insane.
Just outside, there was a giveaway, and it's like, hey, we're going to give you a free stay. That got given away, but everybody still was like, well, hey, I may not have won this, but I still just want to book this place.
That's what we did. And so what I did was do a 10% discount coupon so that we did it like during the giveaway, but then once it was announced, we were like, hey, congratulations, so-and-so, but the rest of you guys, thank you so much for your interest. Go ahead and use this coupon to get 10% off. And this property was so unique that the photography was great, but it wasn't that great because we had just finished construction, so landscapes hadn't fully matured and grown up, but it was so unique for Texas, being like this kind of Pacific Northwest Scandinavian vibe in the heart of Texas, that people were just crazy about it. So yeah, that translated to $40,000-ish of direct bookings. At that moment, I was like, okay, we're going all in on these influencer collaborations. So we got restored to Airbnb. It turned out it was like a glitch with their system. But it was too late. The rocket ship had taken off on direct bookings. So we spent like $40,000 the first 6 months just on getting influencers to come out. And we had a lot that didn't pan out, but we had plenty that did. I learned a ton through that process about the right audience fit and, giving.
So don't just give away your stay to anybody kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And,
Got
and
it.
finding
Okay.
the right kind of like overlap between their audience. Travel accounts are the best, but there's other kinds of like lifestyle influencers that would also work. But there's like fitness influencers, for instance. Like there was this one gal who had like 1 million+ followers, but her account hardly generated any interest at all. Just wasn't a good, audience fit. So it wasn't all about numbers, but we learned a lot through that process. And long story short, we grew our count to like 50,000 followers, just piggybacking on these influencer partnerships, and brought in a ton, like hundreds of thousands of direct bookings. And around that time, Instagram was shifting as a platform to be more video centric. And so reels were starting to take off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That was a
so
big
I went
change.
all in on content at that point too. And we started posting really great content, and then ended up working with an agency to help with that. But after the 50,000 mark, then just the virality of our content got us to about 150,000 after 12 to 18 months. Yeah, we never slowed down. 80% plus direct bookings. The remainder are mostly Airbnb. Airbnb is great for filling in like gaps and
Sure.
last minute
Did you ever
openings.
did you ever find out why they blocked you?
So the first time it was suspicious because we had too many reviews in too short of a period of time, and they thought like I had rigged it all. We just had a really great launch. Then,
Great. Okay.
So Rob, the crazy thing, like 6 months later, I'm actually so thankful that happened, and I was able to learn the lesson
yeah.
early on. 6
Best
months
thing that ever
later,
happened to you.
I got suspended for 12 days, a second time. No warning. Customer service was awful. Couldn't get through to anyone. And that time was even worse because they told me, oh, we're waiting on a response to an email that was sent to you on such and such a date. And I mean, I scoured. I never got that email. And so finally, just because at that point I'd been telling my story of just the journey of Live Oak Lake, and I built up somewhat of a following. And so I had some connections at Airbnb. And after just like beating the door down, I was able to get through to somebody who would escalate it far enough to actually realize there was nothing going on with my account, and they restored it. But it's pretty stressful when you get kicked off of an OTA.
Yeah, and you got online travel agency for people that don't know, but it's really you have investor money on the line. I guess at this point everyone was paid back, so maybe it wasn't that part
It was
wasn't as
still
stressful. But
though. I mean, yeah.
you still got your note, right? You still have your monthly mortgage. Bills still got to be paid. Money still got to be made. So let's talk about I kind of want to go back a little bit, because I think the plague of the short-term rental industry is that, the bloggers, the travel vloggers that reach out on Instagram, they're like, hey, I really love your tiny house. I'm a travel vlogger or blogger, and I'd love to like make content at your Airbnb in exchange for a free stay. And then I'm like, great, what's the name of your blog? And then they're like, well, I haven't launched it yet. I'm actually just creating a lot of content first, and then I'm going to launch it. And I'm like, oh God, like I hate with the capital H influencers reaching out for free stays. So I've actually been kind of anti, but hearing your story, I'm always like, all right, there's obviously a method here. Funny story, before I get your tips, Levi Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay. Also a speaker at HostCon. Go to hostcon.com to grab your tickets. He reached out to stay at my tiny house in Joshua Tree. He was like, hey man, I'm a YouTuber. I'd love to stay at your tiny house. And I was just like, kick rocks, whatever. I'm like, who cares?
Dude, oh man.
And then, hold on, I didn't tell him that. I was just like, yeah, I'm all good. And then I was like, maybe I should think about this. I was like, let me just look him up. And I went to YouTube and I looked up Levi Kelly, and I realized that I had just subscribed to his YouTube channel the week before one of his shipping container properties like that he did a tour on went viral. And I was like, oh, Levi Kelly, he wants to stay at my place. Oh my God. And then I was like, hey, yeah, actually, I think I might have an opening. By the way, I'm a YouTuber too. I had like 5,000 subscribers at this point. And I was like, maybe we could do a collab. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was kind of funny. Like my closed-mindedness almost led to me never actually getting to know Levi, who's an amazing YouTuber, awesome influencer in the space, content creator. But that's just kind of my funny anecdote. There's obviously a method to the madness here. I had this pickleball influencer stay at my Scottsdale property. She made a reel that went crazy viral. It got like over 1 million, I think 1.5 million views. And, I can't attribute my bookings to this exactly, but I will say immediately after, like the whole dynamic of my property shifted insanely. And we went from doing like, $10,000, $12,000 a month, which is a huge negative. Our costs were like 20,000 to doing like 39,000 to 45,000 a month in the high season, all because of these influencers that, you know, did stay at our properties. So how does someone know when an influencer reaches out on Instagram, how does someone know if it's like a legitimate influencer or if it's someone that bought 10,000 followers for $50?
Yeah, so there's a few things here. For one, early on, I had a few people reach out to me because I had posted a couple photos during construction, and 2 or 3 of them ended up being like the best influencers I ever worked with. But then after we launched and the first influencers that had covered us, there were a ton that reached out that I learned were not really worth their salt. So the lesson there is initially take everyone seriously and see if there's a fit. But in general, you're going to, as a host, going to want to reach out, send outbound messages to the right influencers in your region. So that means you're going to need to do some market research to see what's working, who's working, talk with other hosts to see which influencers are working. So that being said, I kind of like to group influencers in 2 categories. You have micro and macro influencers. And so let's say that threshold is, and there's different criteria, but let's use followers as the metric. So let's say 10,000 and below are micro. There's going to be some just extremely talented creators in that pool of influencers that won't have much of a value when it comes to posting content about you on their platform or doing a giveaway and, you know, leveraging their audience. But because you're going to view your social media strategy holistically, and it's not just about influencer collaborations, it's also about creating great content, which can be a pretty heavy lift. Being able to partner with them and get some of this content early on when they're much more familiar with like showcasing properties or editing videos, whatever, can be super valuable. So I would strongly recommend using some of them for that. And in addition, some of those will have a valuable audience that's more localized to your area, let's just say, where the number of followers is less relevant. It's all about the quality. Now, there's some bigger influencers in most regions that I've seen in the US. There's influencers that have 50,000 to 500,000 followers. That's a big spectrum, but there's going to be influencers in that range, and you're going to need to do your due diligence. So you need to look back through their content, whether they reach out or you reach out, have them send you like 2 or 3 case studies. They should be used to doing this because a lot of hosts will ask for that, and see how many views they generated. Most important metric is how many taps on the content were generated. So that means like there was a link and the content generated a tap. And now that is actually entering into the funnel where you have a chance of converting that into a booking. But it's not
that click that you're talking about would only show up on stories though, right? Not on, you can't measure link clicks on like a post.
Well, no, what you can do is you can do a profile tap. So if there was a piece of content that did well and then it caused the person viewing it, you know, they're just scrolling through their reels to click on the profile, then that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So yeah, then they have to click on the link. So it's more of like a profile tap. But of those, yeah, and then you're going to convert some. But again, like you're not just solving for booking conversions. It's pretty hard actually to get somebody who's never seen or heard of you, no matter how great your piece of content is, from just 0 to go and book with you. So you're going to be trying to convert a lot of people to just follow you, because then you've got your own content machine, and then it's just a matter of time and you're going to get them to book. And you want to just become top of mind so that, you know, 6 months down the road, they want to take a staycation, and what's the first place that they think of when they talk to their wife about where they should go stay, or whoever they're staying with. So obviously
it's funnel marketing, basically.
Yeah.
You're using these influencers they're the top of your funnel. They're going into your Instagram at that point. They're following you. Some of them might book like immediately, but really the idea is they're following into your Instagram account where you're indoctrinating them, I guess, for lack of a better term, getting them to love you, getting them to, you know, go goo goo gaga over your amazing reels and photos. And then eventually Valentine's is around the corner. The boyfriend has forgotten to get their girlfriend a gift, and they're like, oh crap, what do I do? Oh, look, it's open. I'm going to book Isaac's place on Live Oak Lake, and boom, that's how you get your booking.
Yep. And you know, a great way to compensate creators and influencers, a lot of them will ask for a flat fee, and even the best ones, that's just the way that they're used to working. So, you know, the best ones, we paid $3,500 for a one-time giveaway, but I mean, they drove insane value. But what I like to do is actually do a somewhat of a combination between a flat fee plus a room comp for them to come out, stay, create the content, but then give most of their compensation tied to their upside. So again, I'll do like a coupon code that's unique to that creator. Then they'll encourage through stories, through the through the post itself, they'll encourage their followers to book with that. And then you're solving for direct booking conversions, which again are not everything, but the most valuable fruit of these strategies. And then we just do it like a revenue split or a profit split. So I'll usually
and there's
do like
enough margin to do that for you.
Oh, yeah.
There's enough margin for you to give away some of that profit.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, now obviously tied to all of this is a conversation about revenue management and dynamic pricing and setting your stays at the right level to where you're not too cheap and you're just booking out, because then, yeah, who cares how many people you're driving? It's actually hurting you because you're selling places that you're selling nights that could be much more valuable. So you need to have a thorough understanding of how to correctly price, and the best way to do that is just going to be active intentional monitoring for the first several months of operating, and then you can set a pretty simple strategy through a pricing tool like Price Labs or Wheelhouse or one of these others that will do most of the work for you, and you just check it every few months. But yeah, that's a great point, because revenue management, dynamic pricing, whatever you want to call it, dovetails very nicely with these social media strategies. And the best is when, whether you're doing it yourself or you're hiring an agency like Ben Wolf with Owasi or some of these others that will do both aspects, you're hiring an agency to do that, then they understand, okay, we have an influencer that's about to drop a bunch of amazing content. Let's go ahead and modify our pricing in the short term. Exactly.
Nice. You dirty dog. Wow, that's a good one. That is a good one. Okay, so golly, I could really just go all in on this particular topic, but there's just so much more to the story. So I'm going to move us along. There's a good chance that we're probably going to do a part 2 on this at some point, because I think the direct booking piece of this is like very, very valuable. It's very big right now, and a lot of people obviously are like looking to this as a solution. Me, myself, I've really leaned into the direct bookings. Pink Pickle, my property in Austin, Texas. Bridget Whitney, it's Bridget Bitch on Instagram. Other people have promoted it, and I've gotten, at this point, I think we're at $85,000 in bookings for 2024. The next closest comp to mine is making $55,000 a year. I'm probably going to do like 120 to 150. So influencer marketing and great design has allowed me to 2 or 3x the competition in my neighborhood, which is pretty cool. All right, let's move on.
Hey, Bob, can I interject something here?
Uh-huh.
So one thing that it's like a little pet peeve for me that I want to like set the record straight. So many people have come to me after seeing the success of Live Oak Lake and sort of ask for the Band-Aid method of fixing direct bookings or giving them direct bookings, where it's like, okay, show me what to do and where to spend money on my direct booking strategy, whatever, because I want to have those same results. And yes, of course you can see some like marginal upside to doing some of that, but like it really does start with the actual property and the experience that you're offering. And I hate to harp on it, but you mentioned design. Design is so important. Like design is, as my friend Hans likes to say, the greatest amenity that you can offer. It's the it's the most powerful lever that you can push and pull. And so incorporating like great design into all aspects, top to bottom, front to back, both digitally and with the brand and with the social media following, then most importantly with the actual experience itself, and just like being maniacal about the attention to detail in every aspect of the guest experience. That's what makes a stay story worthy. And really social media and influencers, that's just like a juiced up version of word of mouth marketing, which everybody knows is the most powerful marketing there is. So you just need to have an experience and a property that's actually worth talking about, and then use the social media and the influencers to just like pour gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, gas on the fire. Dude, yes. I'm so annoyed. Like, dude, we have fallen, really, I'm going to throw my wife under the bus on this one, but we went to this freaking sushi place that went viral on TikTok in Houston. I'm not going to name it, but amazing viral content. And then we went to the place and it was trash. It was the worst expensive meal we've ever bought. And I'm just like, the experience didn't actually live up to the viral content. I love you, babe. It's not your fault. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Bleep that out. My wife's like, where? She's great. I love you, babe. But it's like, the same thing can happen with Airbnbs where you have this viral content and then the Airbnb doesn't live up to it. And we really did spend a lot of time like making sure that the experience is better than the actual like marketing. And when you have amazing marketing and amazing design, the sum is greater than the parts, right? That's the phrase, right?
And the truth is, like, your chances of, nobody can predict virality. Yes, obviously people can understand the algorithm, but nobody can really predict what's going to go viral. But the best chances that you can like stack in your favor are when you actually nail the design and the experience. And then, yeah, like you say, then you have everything coming together and it's just magical. And if anything, you're underselling. That's like my philosophy. If anything, you should undersell the property. So when they go there, they're absolutely blown away. There's nothing worse than overpromising, like you're talking about. But if you undersell it, they're just blown away. Then they're going to go out and literally Instagram for you all of that like amazing content around your Instagrammable property. And they're going to go home and tell all their friends and family in person, and they're going to bring them back and have family reunions and make a tradition out of it. And that's exactly what we saw. It's this incredible like snowball.
Yeah, well, I will say I keep checking my tagged photos on the Pink Pickle ATX Instagram account. Go follow that if you want to check that out. But it's heartwarming, man. People are like taking photos like at this place or like making memories. It's a bachelorette pad, and it's just been very, very cool. One of my friends follows someone who was staying at my property. They didn't know the connection, and my friend was like, "Hey, look at this." Like someone posted you on Instagram, and like it was kind of funny that it was such a small world. And then like my friend was like, "Hey, my best friend made that." And then they were like, "Hey, you got to give them props. This is literally like unlike any Airbnb I've ever stayed at. This is the most amazing place we've ever been. I can't believe a place like this exists." And I was just like, we did it. We did it. So it was really, really cool. So I think that's always the gratifying part of all of this. And if you create this experience, Isaac, you make more money. So let's talk about that a little bit with Live Oak Lake. You managed to kind of circumvent the Airbnb world because you got shut down, got reinstated, got shut down again, reinstated, but then you kind of went all in on direct bookings, influencers. Tell us about how this actually amounted into the revenue side of things. How much money did you kind of clear? What was your yearly revenue on year one of launching this property?
Year one, we basically hit $1 million even on top line. And before the debt service, we were at like $500,000, $520,000. And then, so like that's the EBITDA, whatever. And then the debt service was $180,000. So like $320-ish thousand of free cash flow. So the cap rate is obviously figured on the EBITDA because, you know, the loan could be
Right, NOI doesn't matter, or NOI is does not factor in debt service, all that stuff,
right.
Net operating income. So explain that a little bit, because I do start talking about this on the channel. I often don't, because the channel's more for the aspiring short-term rental entrepreneur. I think it's an important conversation to have, because a lot of people think in the world of Airbnb that, hey, I have this Airbnb, it makes $100,000 a year. I bought it for $500,000, but because it makes $100,000 a year, yeah, I want $800,000 for it. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, that's not how it works. You don't get a cap rate when it's a single property. But you got into this space at 7 doors. You got a cap rate assigned when you sold it, which is awesome. I think 6 doors is kind of where you get that cap rate valuation in the short-term rental space. I'll let you chime in on that. And for you, the actual worth of the property whenever you sell it or exit is straight up based on the net operating income, which is pretty much the profit minus your debt service. So can you talk a little bit about how that all works and how much profit actually factors into the total valuation of all of this?
So, I mean, value is always going to be subjective. It's your property's worth whatever someone's willing to pay you. That's essentially what your property's worth. And we had a ton of interest from other investors individually, but also private equity groups. We had several come along that wanted to buy Live Oak Lake. And a lot of them kind of wanted to lowball us compared to what we really got. But again, like we sold, I think it was a pretty good price. I think it was a good deal for both sides, actually. It ended up being an 8% cap rate on our net revenue. So $7 million, we had netted like $550,000 on the trailing 12 when we sold, and our rates were still inching up. It was crazy. But a big part of that value, I mean, $1 million a key is just a ton. So like there's the per key metric, there's the cap rate metric, there's, you know, again, replacement value. There's all these different ways of valuing a property, but that brand and the audience value was huge. So, you know, 150,000-ish followers at the time when we sold, and several tens of thousands of emails on a list were really valuable, especially to our buyer and to several of these other private equity shops that have, there's institutional money that is inevitably going to flood into this kind of micro resort, experiential micro hotel space. But yeah, they can't operate on a property by property basis. They're looking for portfolios. This was kind of in the middle because this is like a multi-unit property. So technically it's not really, it's like a one property, but it's multiple keys, 7 keys. But the most valuable piece is that we were able to build that brand around it. That was possible because of the design and because, yeah, the 7 cabins was a unique opportunity to, like, again, showcase this micro village that was so attractive to people from an experience perspective. But the buyers, they valued that audience significantly. And I know that because multiple of the prospective buyers told us, look, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we're planning to build a portfolio leveraging
Right.
that following.
Right. You're basically, to them, they're saying, oh man, I get to walk into a turnkey situation here. I don't have to build a following. I don't have to do this. All I have to do is come in and put an operator in place to basically run this thing for me, or a property management company, basically. And at an 8 cap, basically the way that metric works is if someone were to buy this property all cash, the cap rate is basically the return that they could expect to make it. So if they're if they're buying it for an 8 cap, if they bought this all in cash, their return on this is going to be 8%, which is a pretty damn good return for anyone kind of like buying a property like this.
Yep. And so let me clarify. We were actually self-managing with the system I had in place, just with the software and the smart home hardware. And we had 2 part-time employees, one who was like guest communications and coordinating the cleaners, buying supplies, etc. And then the other one was just like maintenance extraordinaire. And then we had like contract labor cleaners as well, of course. And we had an on-site laundry facility. So it really was a turnkey in every sense of the word. But like the way traditional, and I'm definitely no expert, so I'm going to speak about this on like a secure level because that's about what I'm at with this. But like the way traditional hotel structures work is you'll have a big brand like Hilton or Marriott, and they just have a franchise agreement. And in many cases, they don't even manage the hotel. In some cases, they will manage, but many cases, they just have like a centralized reservation system, and the corporate flag is what they call it. It's their distribution and their reputation, their name. And they're getting like, I don't know, I think it's at least 10% in a lot of cases of just a straight up flat fee, percentage of revenue. And so as a business model, like the hotel brand is an incredible model because it's just leveraging a reputation and it's operationally light typically. And then the real estate would be totally separate. So with a model like Live Oak Lake, you're bringing all the pieces together. You have the real estate, you have the brand, and you have the operating company. It's all kind of in one, and it's a turnkey outfit that you can command a much greater value for because, again, it's so self-contained. But then, of course, for those that are more ambitious operators that want to build a portfolio of these kind of properties, there's just this amazing opportunity in the space right now where people could go out and create multiple properties like Live Oak Lake and collectively brand them, individually brand them, but basically execute the same playbook over and over again, and then build an operating company that basically owns the social media following, that owns the intellectual property, and potentially grow a ton of enterprise value. Like Graduate Hotels. Have you heard of Graduate? Mm-mm. They're kind of boutique hotels in college towns around the country, and they theme each hotel around the local team, athletics, and just the overall school. And they built, I think they have like roughly 50 hotels, and they did an OpCo-PropCo, so they separated the real estate out from the brand. Well, they just now sold the brand to Hilton, I believe, for $200 million. the Graduate Hotel brand. So it's basically the kind of thing where it's like, it's not worth anything until it's worth something, and then it's worth a lot. So if you're going to build a portfolio out, then separate the brand and the operating part of it from the real estate, because there's a ton of upside there. And then, sell that for $200 million to Hilton or Marriott.
Wow. Okay. So it's kind of nuts, dude. It's a really good business model. I've always been really interested in sort of a similar business model. Let's take Live Oak Lake for an example. 7 properties on the lake. I've always liked the idea of having these 7 that you build, but you permit, let's say 20 of them, so that whenever you sell it to that investor, you basically say, hey, you're buying it at the cap rate based on the revenue that I'm actually making. And then if you go out and build the other, I guess in this case, 13 units, because I have 20 permitted at your cost, then your cap rate and your upside is going to be huge whenever you sell it to the next investor. And I think doing the extra due diligence and the extra permitting could result in like quite a bit more money in your pocket. Had you ever considered expanding. Did you have more room on this property to permit other units or no?
Yeah, Live Oak Lake, we basically maxed out every square foot. Now, let me make one note here. A lot of times investors look at markets when they're trying to choose the right market for any kind of investment, but certainly for hospitality like this. And they try to find high barrier to entry markets, which basically means it's typically very hard to build new construction or to get a permit to operate, depending on what the jurisdiction will allow in terms of building and operating. Well, I took the opposite approach. I built in rural Texas, in near Waco, but outside city limits. So it's an unincorporated part of the county. But so the land was relatively inexpensive, and there was zero barrier to entry in terms of anybody could build really anything they want. But I executed like this incredible, cohesive, well thought out vision very well. And then I built a following around it. And now I have the first mover advantage. So even if somebody really does want to come along and try to copy exactly what I did, I already have the followers and I have the name and I have the brand recognition. So they're probably not going to do very well. Now, I think that there's a ton of opportunity where like they could create a unique experience and execute that's unique from Live Oak Lake, and it's not the Scandinavian cabin on the lake idea, and execute it really well. Sure. And like, this is definitely not a zero-sum game, that we're in the early innings of a massive revolution in travel and hospitality. And my generation of travelers cares so much less about luxuries and just like things being thrown at them and white glove service and front desks and like all these actually like transactional aspects of hospitality. They don't care about that.
Like the hotel side of things.
Yeah. Like traditional hotel and resort, they care about unique, one-of-a-kind, distinctive, immersive, non-vanilla type of experiences.
Instagrammable.
Right?
And I think that's why the big rise of boutique hotels is kind of like, in my mind, the new flavor of real estate right now. Everyone wants to do boutique hotels because I think a lot of real estate investors aren't interested in, well, I mean, I guess that's not true, but the Hilton, the dream of opening up a Hilton is pretty rare. I haven't really met any real estate investors that are like, I want to go do a DoubleTree. Most real estate investors I know in my circle of influence or in my, I guess, network, they all want to go buy a little janky building, renovate it, put a lot of design into it, and have like a really amazing 10 to 50 key hotel that basically is like a money printing machine.
Yeah. And so just to close the loop on your question, I don't think that I think there are relevant factors like proximity to population. So creating this kind of a unique experience that is a drive-to distance from a large market. And, so in our case, Texas Triangle, 23 million people within 2.5 hours and Waco's smack dab in the middle, perfect location. There's tons of other markets too. I'm not looking for, the big attraction like a national park or Joshua Tree, though I think that certainly there are going to be some that do very well. It's just a different approach. I'm looking for underserved markets that have tons of GDP, basically lots of wealth and population that has a pent-up demand for unique experiences. Texas fits the bill across the board. There's tons of markets across the Midwest.
I think it's fair. I heard you say that on Cody's video that y'all did, the collab that y'all did about a year ago, I think, about how you don't really love Joshua Tree. And truthfully, I loved it, and then I fell out in love with it. And I'm actually back in love with it again. I've actually come around to thinking that Joshua Tree is a little bit more underserved, but it's underserved in the world of amenities and experiences. And I think all of the places that don't have amenities or experiences are kind of getting their lunch eaten, my property included, which did super well that first year that I launched it because of a lot of the viral success that I had. One of those videos was the video that Levi Kelly did. It got 4 million views. Everybody listening or watching this right now, stay tuned for that. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But I actually think that Joshua Tree, it's a different approach like you're saying, but it's almost the same thing because I think that Joshua Tree is underserved for the type of demand that's actually desired out there. I think right now people are out there, they're like, I don't want this remodeled bungalow. I want this remodeled bungalow with a pool and a shade and boulder formations in the backyard, and they want that Instagrammable photo. So I kind of feel like you can apply that same logic to so many different markets or micro markets that are out in the country right now.
You totally can. And here's another little tidbit like that more people should be employing right now. Founder-led companies, you see this across the tech industry, you see this really across all businesses, but social media has become such a powerful tool, and Instagram specifically. People gravitate towards people and towards brands, but not towards businesses. So if you're going to create a brand, or if you're going to create a one-off property, tell your story, be authentic. That doesn't mean you need to like have super highly produced. My problem is like everything I do, I want it to be perfect. And so then that kind of just leads to paralysis and I don't create enough content. But people love raw, authentic content. Let me give you one example. Do you know Devin Lorop of the Pacific Bin?
What is that? Is that a property?
Yeah, you got to look it up on Instagram, the Pacific Bin, BIN. So he basically designed and built this like 4 shipping container stacked upon each other structure in the woods in Washington State. And then he filmed the whole process. Like he literally with his 2 hands built the thing. It took him a year. He filmed himself on his iPhone with a $20 tripod and did like 100 videos in a year. And it was, you know, before and after kind of videos and time lapses. Nice. Dude, he built over 1 million followers between Instagram and TikTok in a year.
Good for him.
And when he
Instagram?
launched,
It's an Airbnb.
Yeah, it's an Airbnb. So when he launched, he had just with his email list, he put it out there to his calendar. He was booked up like 70-ish% of the first full year within like 2 weeks. So he basically built this huge audience just by telling his story.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, I've seen this guy popping up on YouTube lately. Good for him. Yeah,
now he's on
so
YouTube telling his story like, behind the scenes. And now he's like selling building plans. Like he's got it figured out.
Yeah, I like it. I should have him on the channel. He seems like a cool guy.
Pay me a commission. But anyway, founder
he
stories
should be paying you
awesome.
if I'm going to have him on.
Founder stories are awesome. So like get out there, tell your story. If nothing else, capture content. This is one of the biggest mistakes I made with Live Oak Lake. I didn't take any content. I was so heads down just like building, which was great. Like I actually got it done, but some people go in the other ditch. But at least take videos and then you can come back and like stitch it together and create cool content.
You know why you should really create content? Because you never know when you're going to be telling your story in front of a sold out conference, which is exactly what you're going to be doing, my friend. So if people want to reach out to you on Instagram, how can people find you? Or on Twitter, what's your preferred social platform?
Either one, it's at @IsaacFrench_. And then I just launched a website that has like my newsletter and portfolio. That's isaacjfrench.com.
Wonderful. Well, hey guys, as I alluded to earlier, this is the video that made my property go viral and get tens of thousands of dollars in bookings.